Today I'm going to talk about the secret to a good informational interview. So after you've found a person to connect with, you've sent them a great opening message and they've agreed to chat. Now what? Key to an informational interview when you begin is to frame up the conversation. So let's say we're talking to John. John, thank you so much for taking the time today to meet with me. I really appreciate it. How I'd love to use this time today is number one, I'd love to ask you a few questions about what you're doing, what you're up to, some of the challenges that you're facing and the vision that you have moving forward. I want to learn a little bit about that. Two, I want to tell you a little bit about myself so you can learn a little bit about my context. This is an opportunity to practice your elevator pitch. Three, I want to ask you for some help and advice. I'm looking for my next best career steps and I think you'd have some great insights for me. Number four, I'd like to brainstorm with you a couple people to connect with that you think might be as helpful as you are in making connections. Is that okay with you, John? You get their permission, you get their buy-in. So that way you've got an agenda, they feel safe that there's some structure, you have a reason to interrupt them because you want to use the time most efficiently and you feel comfortable knowing what you're going to be covering in on the call. So then what I like to do when you're asking questions about them is really do your research, do some digging and find out some things that you are really curious about, like what are their goals for the next 6 months? What are their biggest pain points? If possible, if it makes sense, and it doesn't always make sense, you could potentially position yourself in the call or after the call as a solution to their pain points. It's like, oh, I've helped with situations like XYZ, helping people go from their pain point to their vision using my experience and my methods. That's potential, that's an option. But just asking questions about how they got where they were and some specific pointed questions rather than something open-ended shows that you've done your homework and that you're really trying to use the time in the best way possible. You say, thanks, John, that's fascinating. Next, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to give you my quick little elevator pitch about my strengths, some impressive things about me, and what the value that I provide in the world is. And these have been my areas of focus. And where I'm looking to go in the future is XYZ. That's a little bit about me. So next up, I have a few questions about some help and advice that I'd like from you. So if you were in my position, XYZ, what would you do? And this is where hopefully they can refer you to somebody else or give you some ideas about resume, etc. But ask some good questions about advice that you think they would really be helpful with. How did you make the transition from X to Y? And what was the key to that? And then lastly, make sure you got a few minutes left. John, thank you so much. And just reiterating, all right, I'd love to brainstorm for just a couple minutes. What two people do you think would be as helpful as you were that come to mind right now that I think I should connect with next? And don't be afraid to hold them to this on the call. Most people will be like, oh, let me think about it. Be like, I'd love for you to think about it and would love to also use this time as well, because I know sometimes we get busy, we forget about things. So who comes to mind? And if they can't, don't push it. But a little push helps to get them going. And then instead of waiting for them to give an introduction, you just be like, thanks, I'll totally reach out to, Bob Jones. How do you spell that? Okay, Jones, great. And do you mind if I reach out to them and use your name? Assuming that you can find them on LinkedIn or find their email address. We can talk about other tactics for that. That's a great way to run an informational interview, time it to the clock, get some pointed questions, have you feel comfortable, build a relationship quickly, and get what you need out of it, which is more connections and potential referrals. So that is it for this video about how to run an effective informational interview.